only 3 to 4 vendors ever make a typical B2B shortlist. And that is usually formed as well from a day one mental model before any evaluation begins anyway.
The go-to-market
Yeah.
playbook was for B2B was pretty well understood, right? And we knew the metrics to track, and we knew the channels and the resources to bring to bear, and now that's kind of getting turned on its ear a bit.
Just a quick one before we get into the episode, because I've got an offer that I'm sure all of you will be interested in. AEO is something that every B2B marketing team is trying to figure out right now, and most just don't know where to start. But at Blend, we're offering a full AEO analysis of your brand's AI visibility, and we'll walk you through exactly what we found and what to do about it. From full prompt analysis against your competitors to a citation analysis, where we'll look at different content types and how you're being cited for those and mentioned in those, and what you can actually do to be mentioned and cited much more for your brand, and what content you should create going forwards, and how you comprise that strategy really. We will drop a note in the description of this episode in the show notes, and you can go over there, request your free AEO audit, and we will deliver that to you. Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you today, joined by Josh for another episode of the podcast. And I suppose we're almost creating like a bit of a mini series inside of Demand Decoded, which I'm really enjoying at the moment, all about the evolution of kind of buyer behavior and like agentic capabilities, and where that's really taken us in terms of go to market, and where we see these things going, where we're helping businesses, and where hopefully we can bring insight to this podcast as well. And in the episode today, we're really diving into B2B buying cycles and the change that's happening in buyer journeys, largely as a result of buyer preferences and buyer behavior changing, but also there are distinct cohorts of buyers and different buying committees that also demand different processes and different needs throughout that. And the way that they shortlist is different, the way that they discover is different, the way that they require education is different. And we're going to be unpacking all of that today. I think, Josh, your insight on this episode is going to be really interesting from the sales perspective here, and I suppose the business owner perspective as well, and like the impact that this is having. So good to have you back on the episode today.
It's great to be back, Dan. I've always, you use the word miniseries, that harkens my brain back to like 1980s bad television. So I'm hoping we can do a better job than that. But yeah, I mean, in my career, there's never been more urgency to have the most efficient sales organization possible. Let me say the most efficient revenue generation process possible,
Mm.
while while there's also simultaneously the biggest set of changes in that environment, right? And so I think just talking through this together, I think we'll surface some things that'll be hopefully really interesting to the marketing leaders that are watching this, the sales leaders that are watching this,
Yeah.
and yeah. So let's dig in.
Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Most businesses think they know their customers. They have the data, the records, the history, but it's scattered across 3 teams and 4 systems, which means nobody can actually use it. HubSpot connects it all. Every interaction, every support ticket, every conversation into one platform every team can work from. So when sales talk to a customer, marketing already know the full story. And when you know more, you grow more. Check out HubSpot.com, the agentic customer platform for growing businesses. Well, I think the first section to dig in, I always like to frame these in terms of what's changed and why now, ultimately. And I just want to fire some stats out that I kind of curated during the research for this episode, because the change in buyer preference and buyer behavior is just having such a profound impact on everything from marketing to sales and customer success. And like, I know
Yeah.
marketers, we're freaking out at the moment at our dashboards and wondering why on earth traffic has plummeted 60% year on year, and just why everything has changed ultimately. And there are some good studies out there now, and we can link these all in the podcast notes. The first one being 89% of B2B buyers are now using Gen AI as part of their research process. Not surprising, but overwhelming, right? And that is causing, com- compared to 5 years ago, a serious change in buyer behavior and the actual process of researching and evaluating solutions. We think of the change in search. 60% of searches now end without a click because AI is delivering answers directly in the modal actually being used. So the traditional content discovery and content answering is being cut out completely. The next one is shortlisting. Only 3 to 4 vendors ever make a typical B2B shortlist. And that is usually formed as well from a day one mental model before any evaluation begins, anyway. And, the implications of this are huge because if you're not present during this invisible research phase, it's invisible to us now from an attribution perspective, at least, then you're not on the list and you'll never actually know you're excluded from the buying journey anyway. So, yeah, there is just, huge changes happening right now.
But let's not leave our listeners thinking the sky's falling completely. There's also never been more new capability to create connected marketing and sales processes that create faster buyer journeys, better conversions, um, that where you have more control over that actual buying experience and can use it as a competitive advantage. And so there's yes, buyers are doing things differently. I mean, think about the impacts to organizations like Gartner and Forrester and these analyst organizations that have for decades made significant money on
Yeah.
on being the answer to enterprise buying decisions, or at least who should be on that short list. I mean, you can just look at the stock prices for Gartner. Their businesses are under attack, and all because buyer uh, behavior is changing at both large enterprise and in the small and
Yeah.
medium. And so, yeah, like there's a lot of change, but I think there's also incredible opportunity to do things just differently and intentionally, to not to improve what used to be something that couldn't be improved. It was very naturally a marketing and a sales world, with a wall almost always between them that got, things got lobbed over and lobbed back.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and now we have this ability to really handhold and guide this a buyer through a much more improved buying process, and again use that really to separate ourselves and our companies from the what they might be experiencing from our competitors. And so I think, we'll talk through all of that in this episode, but I think there's really interesting opportunities in addition to the fact that yes, for the last 20 years, marketing has for the most part had a single playbook. The go-to-market
Yeah.
playbook was for B2B was pretty well understood, right? And we knew the metrics to track, and we knew the channels and the resources to bring to bear, and now that's kind of getting turned on its ear a bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's two cohorts of marketers developing from like communities that I'm in. It's the ones that are just like, you know what, I can't be bothered to go through this huge change and like have to redo everything that I've done because it's a lot of effort to, I think of AI search being such a new channel that we're all trying to figure out. It's not easy to be the ones who have to figure that out at the start of the channel, right? If we give it
Yeah.
5 years time, there will be a playbook written. But
Yeah, and you might not have a company left. Yeah, I mean,
exactly,
that's I anybody in that camp needs to really reevaluate whether they wanna be in marketing anymore, because that,
yeah.
like, you're either in the game or you're gonna, or this, it's at the rate things are moving, like, you just, I don't see how you have a choice.
Yeah, and the trouble is the opportunity's missed. And you mentioned earlier about the impact on like the analyst firms that put together their like magic quadrants of brands. And the issue with those are that small companies running fantastic AEO playbooks can actually, you know, start to challenge those more effectively with channels like AI search, because the actual models, the algorithms aren't trained to be um, pulling in those authoritative sources just yet. That might change in the future, but yeah, there's a big opportunity. And I just wanted to touch on, Josh. We mentioned during the prep for this. Well, I was trying to create something clickbaity around discovery calls being dead, and that discovery calls just don't exist anymore. But I think what you said around, well, I think for the buyer, a discovery call perhaps doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, they know far more about our organization, in before that first call than they ever have before, and why they're engaging us. Um, for us, though, on the sales side, that first call is critical still, right? We know almost nothing about them.
Yeah.
Now we can improve that, and we should talk about that. What can we do even while we're influencing and sending out core messaging and driving engagement? What can we be collecting about that buyer so that during that first call with a salesperson, that AE is not coming in cold, is not coming in even lukewarm, but it really has a very solid dossier of information about what's going on in that company. What have they done? What have they looked at? Where, like, all the things that we can arm them with, but they're still not going to have had a conversation
Mm.
about what's really happening with that customer. And so that there's nothing more valuable than that first call and that detailed discovery for the sales rep and for the organization that's trying to sell.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Um, okay, so should we talk about the the things that we actually have to do in order to bridge this gap of like evolving buyer behavior and buyer journeys and cycles and things? Because the first thing we've got to do is somehow get on the day one shortlist of 3 to 4 brands.
Yeah.
And I think this is the point, Josh, where we can like start to distinguish between those two different buying motions, right? A
Yeah,
procurement
totally.
led versus a economic buyer led buyer journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important that we do exactly that, because um, too many times, if you're not, too many organizations don't really think through, or spend enough time understanding the motivations of the entities that are going to, the groups within the company that are going to be engaging them. They know their buyer persona, or ICP.
Mm,
They even know their personas, and they know, procurement's one of those maybe,
yeah.
but very rarely do they really architect information and messaging and engagement models around a, what procurement is doing when and what procurement's goals are when they ultimately reach out and connect. But that's a very, very different playbook than than when you have a non-procurement led, um, we can say economic buyer, we can say decision maker, business owner,
Mm,
who's leading that initiative, and maybe they're not even the ones getting in touch with you. Maybe it's somebody that they've assigned to go, execute a project, but they are the ones that, it's in the business that they're directing this, and there isn't a separate procurement function. I think those two worlds are very different in terms of what systems and messaging and process we build around that. So yeah, I mean, pick one, pick your favorite, and let's talk about it a little bit, and then we'll flip to the other side.
Well, I think the procurement-led side is the most interesting because it's the least talked about,
Mm.
for me.
Yep.
And when we think of the discovery process, actually, a lot of the things we talk about on this podcast, how you create fantastic content to engage, your persona, how you create that ongoing value and become part of their like routine and like mental availability. Well, that isn't procurement's job. Procurement don't obsess over your particular thing unless it's, I don't know, maybe a procurement tool. Do procurement people listen to procurement podcasts? I don't know, maybe. I listen to marketing podcasts, so that could be a thing, right? um but I suppose the key difference is the motivations in each of those teams is completely different. What
Yeah.
procurement want isn't necessarily what the end user wants, which is to solve their problem. Like procurement want a solid choice to recommend to the business. Um, at
Yeah, I think procurement's. I'm sorry to cut you off,
okay,
but when we think about procurement's job, their primary job is compliance, making they typically operate in a larger enterprise, a larger business,
yeah,
right? If you have a 25-person company, you probably don't have a procurement head, but um, in a medium to large enterprise, the role of procurement is to drive compliance with company policies, with risk aversion, right? So
yeah,
they're trying to reduce the risk within an organization. Cost, obviously, everybody thinks of cost as the primary driver. Procurement's here to, to turn the screws on me, but that's not actually their like they that's part of their job, but it's not the biggest part of their job. But they're thinking about how do we, generally, how do we have the fewest number of vendors who are the highest reputation, serving our and the least risk, serving our enterprise across um, everything that we do. And so um, they are likely to want to be drawn towards larger vendors who have more um, a more comprehensive offering to the business and can check more boxes, multiple boxes, uh, than they are individual spot solutions, right? If you're the business buyer, you've got a specific problem you're trying to solve. You want to go find something that can solve that problem. You might think about a large suite, but you might think, oh no, I don't want a large suite from a big vendor that only solves 60% or 70% of this problem. I want this thing over here, this smaller company, there's this fits it perfectly. They've solved the exact problem that I have. I want to bring them in and leverage that. Um, Procurement doesn't think that way, right? Procurement, that smaller vendor, well, they don't have, maybe they're not SOC 2 compliant,
yeah,
maybe they're not or ISO compliant for our European friends. Uh, Maybe they don't have the same gravitas. They certainly don't offer all of the breadth of solutions, so they can't be your vendor for this and this and this also. And so, you know, procurement, if you're one of those vendors to get on procurement shortlist of 3 or 4 things, we've got work to do in our messaging to give them reasons why they should feel uh, safe, feel like they really need us to be in that conversation, um, even if we aren't the giant vendor that Gartner might be recommending because they've had a long-term relationship with analysts and so on. So
yeah. But that last point is a good one because the way that the procurement team will actually seek out vendors is either, well, you mentioned it, which is who's the largest, who's got the biggest reputation, who's gonna be the least risky for us to actually bring
Yeah.
in. But also, I've seen just through our actual website forms, procurement teams are actively using AI search to discover new vendors. The
Yeah.
information they're looking for when they actually dig into, are they are they somebody we actually want to reach out to and go through this process, is going to be different. Like, SOC 2 compliance, um, reputable case studies, and like proven results, perhaps in the right sectors and things like that. They might be, yeah, looking for slightly different things. But I also, yeah, the actual channels, the things we think about are different when we're marketing to a procurement team versus marketing to the end buyer. Even things like, we just ruled out like Gartner and the Magic Quadrant at the start of this conversation, but actually for procurement teams, the what the analysts say is probably more important than what the end buyer actually thinks, if that's going to solve their problem or not. So it's all about like what is truly important for your category and your industry. Do the procurement teams that you're selling to still rely on Gartner and Forrester and like all of the big analyst reports? Because if they
Yeah.
do, then you should like work your way into those somehow and build your brand up so you're actually
Yeah.
getting mentioned. um, but at the same time, everybody is using AI search. So that goes all the way from procurement to the end buyer. So how do you understand the way that they're searching compared to the end
Right.
buyer? So you can actually start to create content that is for procurement, like rather
That
than the end buyer.
that's really the I could think the core message is in if you look at your last 20 wins and your last 20 losses, and you see that uh, by the numbers you're doing more RFPs, you're commonly in formal procurement processes, you have to like prioritize core messaging and channel strategies for getting that messaging out specifically for the procurement buyer, and know how, what they care about, how they, how they're going to go find it. And, we have, I mean, obviously we have tools for AEO and things like that that we can deploy, but it's not just having the tool, it's actually putting the time into to creating that messaging. Uh, but I think the flip side of that is that we can also create really appealing uh, engagement processes for procurement buyers, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so what is a procurement buyer going to do? By the time they reach you, they're telling you they're not, they might have an RFI, which is not an RFP, right? They're surveying the market. So we should have our core messaging created in a structure and a system that allows us to very quickly and thoroughly respond to RFIs, um, that provides procurement all the things that they really should care about in our space, and helps educate them. Right? RFIs are all about education, but then when it comes to an RFP, right? We should have the ability. If we're uh, commonly responding to RFPs, they shouldn't be, oh no, I got another RFP. It should be a process between marketing and sales, or sales enablement, that we're leveraging the content we've created historically, the various, you know RFPs we've sent in the past, and we're storing that all in a way that allows us to uh, not just cut and paste, but to shape the new company's RFP based on the content that we've had, but in minutes, not hours and
Yeah.
hours and hours of work. It used to always take hours and hours and hours of work, and so, it was check the box type of thinking, oftentimes in response to an RFP. But now, like, put it all into an MCP server, and create that RFP was absolutely created with AI, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's
without a
almost
doubt.
comical now, the number of documents we
Yeah.
get that are like, this is obviously AI created, but somebody didn't read through it all the way before sending it out, because it's It's not the best RFP in the world, right? So you're going to get a lot of those, but can we create a process between within sales enablement to uh, to allow those to be populated in in just a couple of minutes, and it be really good meaningful content. We can is the answer. Like, we absolutely can and have, and so building those processes, it needs to be an important part of building our overall go to market, right, and
Yeah.
optimizing the um, the procurement cycle or buying process for that customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Then when we think of the flip side of that,
Yep.
the economic buyer, the end buyer, and whatever you want to call them, the process of them discovering you and them buying from you is going to be quite different, right? They're likely not going to be using an RFP. Some still will, I suppose, and they will actively run that process themselves in their own department. But some will have done their own research, identified their own vendors, and will just proceed on
Yeah.
a like non-structured basis. But even the process of actually creating that shortlist will be nothing like the procurement teams. Like, they will be using signals from peers, communities, social, like the mental availability of brands that they've created over years and years and years of preference, probably using some form of search for either research or just validation as well. And the actual curation of that list is very different. And the content that you need to create in order to engage them, in order to actually relate to them and ultimately like bring them into your brand is very different to what procurement need as well. And the sales process, right, when they engage, that is a different model to run than if you were just responding to a procurement RFP.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, care what kind of vendor you are. You hope that you have, business leader uh, engagement, and not procurement engagement. Procurement is a necessary thing for a lot of businesses, but it rarely is uh, the engagement model that most sellers would choose, because it doesn't allow you to really get into why
Yeah.
we're different and why and determine, is this really a great fit for the two of us. But when we have a business that is selling direct to decision makers, direct to buyers like ours, I, I think that's where, stepping through that buying process. And yes, you have to be able to be found. That's important. And so we could probably, and you're the expert there. I'll ask you what's changed and what are the key things that people need to do to be found in today's world compared to even 2-3 years ago. And AEO is obviously one of them, but what are the other things? But then once you're found, orchestrating that buying process and that customer experience is fun. Like, now you can really get creative with, how do we, that first call, yeah, it's a discovery call, but how do we make it feel, when that buyer leaves, how do we make them feel like, oh my gosh, this is, like, emotionally, procurement's hard to impact emotionally, I've
Mm.
found.
Yeah. Yeah.
But business buyers absolutely are, and they still want to buy from people they like and that they respect, and they see real, they see themselves in the case studies, or in the social proof, or in the exam, the how you present your solution. So that first conversation, and giving them a view of, we are going to make you successful, and here's how, here's why, is, we can do such an incredible job now with, anything from collecting information about those people and the company ahead of time, and preparing our AE to have that conversation, to creating personalized demos on the fly, and uh, being able to go in and go live into companies, even pulling data from, from their, like, looking at their, who they sell to and their buyers, and depending on what you're selling. Now I'm starting to think about our business, and how we go about applying those kinds of experiences. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think there's so many more tools and opportunities to create, uh, to knock down the wall of the historical. Oh, I've got a lead. I'm throwing it over to sales, and sales catching it and saying, "Oh, this lead sucks." And we can get to way better collaboration now.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a quick break in this episode to tell you about a podcast that's essential for understanding how AI is reshaping marketing. The Next Wave, hosted by Matt Wolf and Nathan Lands from the HubSpot Podcast Network. They consistently break down the latest AI developments and what they actually mean for the way that you do business. In one episode, they dive into whether 2026 is the year AI agents become truly indispensable, covering the explosions of new AI models, how they're getting smarter and cheaper, and why companies are racing to build integrated, emotionally aware agents. If you're not keeping up with how fast AI is moving, your business is already falling behind. The Next Wave, available wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, every B2B marketing team is trying to figure out AEO, where they stand, whether it matters for them, and what they're supposed to actually do about it. The best place to start is knowing where you stand. We're offering a full AEO analysis of your brand's visibility across AI search engines, how often you're mentioned, what you're being cited for, and how your competitors are showing up. Then we'll walk you through the findings on a call with clear next steps. And we're doing all of this for free. You can request your analysis in the show notes below. Well, actually, the process of building that connection, that human connection, oftentimes the best deals don't start when that connection is built on the first sales call. It starts when it's built at the brand level. If somebody, when we get a lead in that's listened to our podcast, for example, they're a very different buyer than somebody who's found us
Mm.
via AI search.
Yeah.
Just because naturally they've probably listened to, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 hours worth of our content. They are invested in
That's
what we
terribly
do.
intimidating, by the way.
It's great, but this is episode 122 now, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of content out there to consume. And I know, from feedback from you, Amanda, like Sean, Phil, when they have conversations with prospects that have engaged with a lot of our content, the understanding of what we do and how we can help is just a lot deeper than if they have found us via search and discovery. So I think even from a marketing perspective, how do we help sales sell easier? It's actually, well, how do we curate more of the content that sales would actually typically have on a one-to-one basis, on a one-to-many basis with our audience? Like, what are the
Yeah.
conversations happening on those calls? What are the problems that we're addressing, and how do we communicate that to the market so that the entire process is joined up from start to finish? And yeah, I mean, that will help, like, win rates to start with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's never been more opportunity in creating, you know, real thought leadership, real depth of content that, uh, from your executives, from your, the individual businesses, thought leaders, or people that should be out in the industry to create, like, especially in the mid-size B2B company, right? The companies that we deal with are typically, call it 25 million to 250 million, maybe 500 million of turnover. In that space where you're really trying to scale the business, right? That's you're still you're in a growth mode. You want to grow efficiently typically, but you want to, so we're not talking about VC hockey sticks. We're just talking about, solid businesses, probably PE owned, that are trying to grow, and achieve an outcome in the next 3 to 5 years. The um, the opportunity really drive brand presence that is authentic, and that becoming the key source of pipeline is like it's becoming critical, because without okay, you used to be able to say, okay, well, I can either invest in brand presence, and the marketing guy would be like, yeah, and then and but he wouldn't be able to say, this is here's exactly what you're going to get. Or as a sales leader, I could go get
Mhm.
12 BDRs, and I could just pound the phones and
Yeah.
crank it. um, with very few exceptions, and I can think of maybe one or two, but with very few exceptions from an industry standpoint, the BDR way to do things is now completely, or almost completely, dead in the way that it was done before. And I know that there'll be plenty of people who would like to disagree with me on that. But the number of cold calls that I pick up, the number of cold anything that I pick up anymore, or that anybody who people are just too busy and they're not going to engage. However, if I take that same investment and I apply it to saying something meaningful, right, having an opinion, not just saying, I was
Mm.
talking to one company uh, last week, and they were showing me what they were doing with their LinkedIn outreach. And the very first, like, they had good process for how to identify who they should connect to on LinkedIn, and how to start to build uh, relationships between their C-suite and people that they might want to sell to. But then they showed me the actual workflow, and the first thing was a direct message that was, "Here's what we do."
Mhm.
It had nothing to do with the actual person or helping them do their jobs. It was just an advertisement. Like, we have to do better than that,
Yeah.
but we can do better than that, I guess is what I'm saying. And so investing in thought leadership, in content that helps your target customers do their jobs better, like podcasts, but it doesn't have to be podcasts. Podcasts are a big commitment, as you well know, and I'm glad you lead that for us. But that's not every company has that uh, staying power, right? I was talking to another customer. This is probably off. We might cut this from the thing, but they they were talking about, oh yeah, I saw your podcast. Maybe we should do a podcast. I said, well, plan to do it for 6 months without any uh, payback, or any
Yep.
ability to even know whether it's being effective. And if you don't have that 6 months every week commitment, don't bother. And and so then they said, okay, what else should we do? Because they
That
didn't.
it's so, so true, and I think I mentioned, a while back that Stephen Bartlett, obviously Diary of a CEO, published, I can't remember how many subscribers they got to. Was it 10 million? It was some crazy
Wow.
number. And but for the first 7 years of Diary of a CEO, their numbers were absolutely terrible. I mean, I say terrible. They're still good, but nowhere near on the scale that they're at now. It was only in year 7 when they got their first 100,000 subscribers, and then from there, like it just went absolutely
Exploding.
uh,
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, the consistency really does pay off, and even from this podcast, I think we had like two downloads in the first month. And the trouble is, you need to get comfortable with non-traditional attribution and ways of measurement to do anything that's remotely effective when it comes to like brand and building mental availability, because the traditional like first touch, last touch attribution models don't allow you to build that consistent, regular like cadence and ultimately the connection with the buyer that's required for that, because it just promotes like direct channel like
Well,
research and evaluation.
yeah. So here's a novel thought. What if we stopped telling the board and the CEO and anybody outside of marketing attribution numbers, like individual channel attribution numbers, and instead only talked about actual pipeline created and actual pipeline closed.
Yeah.
Uh, and and only and when they asked questions, tell them it's none of your business. You trust me. You trust me to manage the budget and get the best outcome. And here's how I'm comparing my outcomes on the number of inbound opportunities that we've created. Or let's scrap the word inbound, because that's a term from previous
Yeah.
generations of marketing. But um, could use unbound. That's a HubSpot joke for those of you who don't know. But uh, but yeah, if I see too many uh, boards and C suites trying to push down attribution logic to say, well, should I make this investment or that investment? That's not your job. Your job is to hire a really good marketing team that can then manage a budget and drive the best outcomes possible. And if you don't have confidence that they're capable of doing that, then get a new marketing team. But you rarely are going to have the expertise to make good decisions there. Too often it's going to be like, if I came to you, this I mean, I'm your boss, right? I'm I say to you, okay, what you're our internal marketing leader. If I were trying to measure you on, is Dan making the right individual investments into each channel, who am I to make that decision? Right? I'm going to say, oh, well, look, this one got us, 5 uh, new leads last week. This one got us 10, so the 10 is better. Well, maybe not. And
Yeah.
we don't, and because of the complexity of the interconnectedness of everything that we're doing, even when you tell me, well, this one got us 10 and that one got us 5, that's not the full story. But because I'm, a CEO that has a lot going on, I'm not going to listen to you when you go to tell me all of the details behind why it's not the full story. I just need to not, I need to be able to let that go and to be able to just trust, which is what we do, right? You get to decide how we achieve those things, and we look together on what we're getting from all of the effort we put in and all the resources we put in. I really think marketing's got to grow a spine and tell the C-suite, get out of my shop, right? Like, if the sales guys had the C-suite saying, well, tell me about this part of your sales
Mm.
process and this part of your sales process, and they would get a little bristly. Why do they think that uh, the marketing team, that they have the right knowledge and expertise to be able to tell the marketing team this is how you do it? Anyway, we're definitely going to need to cut this section back, but I do believe, there's something here that says, stop trying to tell people about attribution, because if you're a professional in this space, you should know that the interconnectedness of brand and how people are researching and buying now have completely decimated
Yeah.
historical attribution models, and there's no point. What is interesting is asking the buyer. Like, self-reported attribution is interesting just to gain buyer's perspective. They may not be right, right? The fact that my logo showed up 17 times or 37 times before you engaged me on something else,
Mm.
but you felt more comfortable engaging. It wasn't something you clicked on, or you registered. But the fact that when you did click something, or you found me on AEO, or you felt more comfortable because
Mm.
you had been seeing my brand for the last 3 months. Um, that that might have value, but there's no way we can put a number to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a perfect rant, actually, that we should certainly leave it like, yeah, because it's right. Like, you're coming from the C-suite perspective ultimately, and you've joined the gang, the marketing gang. You're like you've seen the true colors of marketing, right? And the interconnectedness of it is crazy. Like your event booth cost of 250 grand isn't just a direct reflection of the leads you get from that event. The compounding
Right.
impact then of somebody seeing your brand coming to talk to you, but then maybe 18 months down the line, after seeing your content on LinkedIn, listening to your podcast, coming to another event, like just seeing your brand and connecting with you again and again and again, might actually lead them to, who knows, inquire via Google search because they saw your brand in the top 3 results and then reached out to you via that. So yeah, I think attribution totally flawed, and I love the case for, let's just stand up and actually say we don't need
So
to be talking
the
about it now.
flip side of that's true too, though, right? Right. Like I started with, if you don't have confidence that your marketing team knows what they're doing, go get a new marketing team. If you're not if you're in the marketing team and you're not willing to be held to, this is real pipeline
Hmm.
and it's converting at this level of success in the sales process and it's delivering this much revenue. If you can't commit to that whole uh, outcome, right? Like if you told me, "Oh, Josh, I'm doing a great job. I've got 100 new leads coming in last week, and and I should, and none of those convert, right? Because they were the wrong buyer." I'm still saying, man, Dan doesn't get it. It's not, it's not a problem with our sales process. It's a problem with the inputs and how we've designed our marketing function. Then, um, that's going to be a hard conversation for you. so, like it is
Yeah.
important that we have marketing leaders who understand this is my job and this is what I'm here to deliver. It's, um, but yeah. Anyway, okay, we can move on. Um, hey, here's one. Now I'm just going to skip ball, kind of ping pong ball. What what is the ideal, or what are some of the ideal processes and tools that could be put in place for the procurement led buying process? What are the things that we could be doing that we often don't do in a marketing and sales, in a go to market function, that would set us apart, create uh, easier to do business with, easier to, like, they understand, like from a procurement standpoint, they understand me. They're easy
Yeah.
to work with. They're like, I want these guys to be successful because they seem like they really get it, even if they're smaller and not as, and you're especially if you're smaller and you're competing with really big platform players. What's your opportunity for creating, any ideas? I've
Yeah.
got a couple.
Well,
I'll
yeah,
throw it
I,
at you.
I kind of wish I had the growth cycle to bring up because I suppose it's the first 5 stages, right, of that, where we should be thinking about how do we actually engage procurement in each of these stages, all the way
Yep.
from product market fit, but messaging tailored to procurement, to distribution of content to procurement, because we can remember, like, identify intent signals from buyers, even using tools like HubSpot, and then actively target their procurement team. Like if we see
Yep.
that organization is interested in X service and that fits into your category, and let's say they're a Fortune 500 company, so the likelihood is they're going to have a procurement team that is actually going out to get vendors for the service. Well, you could start to target them, and you could do outbound to them using the right kind of like messaging. Um, but I think,
You could offer RFP templates. You could like, what are the things that we can do to get our messaging in, but also help them
yeah,
do their jobs better, right? We could create sites for where they can download, easily access all of our security and compliance information and like detailed security docs, like that they're going to need, right? We know they're going, when you're dealing with a large organization, there's some things that right? A large European organization, there's obviously going to be a GDPR process as part of that, right? You're going to be expected to sign up to a set of uh, clauses for being a data processor. Okay, how about we have that already set up and ready to go, uh, so that we actually, it doesn't hit us and then it takes 3 weeks for legal to review it and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's
Like,
like your deal room software. So like we use Trumpet for deal rooms, which is a great
yep,
piece of software. Can you have a
yep,
template that's for procurement teams? So it
yes,
includes all of that security information by default. Like all of the information they would need is just already curated in that template because sales or whoever's responding to that RFP do not want to be going through the process of manually curating that every single time. So like creating a template with that all in is going to be really useful.
but then having something like Blend Core that has all of our content in it, all of our own product and service definitions, our values, our company branding information, uh, uh, and then previous examples of approved responses uh, to RFPs, we can now create a process that will allow us to create a custom response to a new RFP coming in, and 95% of the work will be done in 2 minutes after receiving it, and then just somebody needs to go through and check it, curate it, and off it goes. Like having that, being able to respond to procurement instead of 2 weeks, being able to tell them, hey, we can get that back to you tomorrow.
Mhm.
We're ready to go. We're very eager to earn your business. And can we? And by the way, we also thought you didn't ask these 10 questions.
Mm,
We think you should, right? And here's answers. Here's
that's
our
good.
answers to
Yeah.
those, right? Thinking about how to help them how to be proactive to engage them and help procurement be successful is something that I think we can build into that sales process if we're selling to a primarily procurement driven function.
Yeah, I mean, which most people don't think about, right? We build out the templates to sell to our end buyer. We build out the problem statements that they're trying to solve and all the cool demo videos of our product. Procurement just want to know if you're SOC 2 compliant. Like
Right.
and if you've got a couple of case studies relevant to their industry. Um yeah, the requirements are quite different and I suppose we need to be thinking about the different cohorts of buyers um that will actually approach us. All right, Josh, nearly out of time. So I suppose just to start to close us out and wrap us up, any last thoughts on this one?
Time flies on when we're doing this. I feel like we need 3 hour sessions. It's just so much fun to talk about. Um, okay, for non procurement led functions, I think we can. So first of all, the key thing is know your buying process and know how your customers are going to buy from you, and make sure that you're designing the buying process with the uh, with whether it's a procurement led process or whether it's a non procurement led process. Let's know that ahead of time, and let's design our selling process around our buyers uh, most likely engagement model. But then, in the non procurement side, what we can do, what we should be thinking about, let's reduce friction in every step of the buying process. Let's create self-serve pricing where we
Mm,
can. Let's create clear proposal templates that are custom templates that are, it uses a standard for, but it is, by leveraging AI we can take their requirements and build a very unique experience, bespoke proposals specifically for that client, and we can do it fast. We can turn around um, inquiries and create custom responses to follow up questions, but we can give our sales teams tools to be able to do that at scale while staying within the boundaries that we need to, with staying safe, basically, right? We
yeah.
want to make sure that we're, I know we're wrapping up, but quick story. I had a CEO tell me the other day that he was building an MCP, that actually he was telling me he didn't need my MCP, our blend core, because he was building his own, and it was going to connect to his internal SharePoint, to his Jira ticketing system, to all these different systems and capabilities. And it was going to be the brain of the entire enterprise, basically, right? Had to have access to everything. This is like $100 million company. So there's a lot there. And I asked him, great. So what happens when a sales guy types into, give me an answer for this question, and the answer is sheds light on some weaknesses in the company? Do you think that because it's going to have access to your
Yeah.
ticketing system, it's going to have access to your SharePoint, it's going to have access to things that you aren't part of your curated marketing messaging? Do you think that it's going to that's going to be a challenge to manage? He's thought about it. He said, how much is your solution? And so I say that only to say, be careful with MCPs. They are incredibly powerful, but they will also use all of the information you give them access to. Actually, it's not the MCP that does it; it's Claude that does it, or your LLM. But it's through that MCP. Um, so we have to be careful with data governance and the information that we're exposing to it. Um, I would recommend you have a curated solution, whether it's ours or somebody else's. But in any case, we should be able to create a curated environment that does enable sales to respond very, very quickly, but very bespoke and customized. And so we can create uh, processes for like the buyer process that expects questions and answers those questions ahead of time for our sales teams, and uh, helps them just move that conversation along faster. If I'm a customer, I do care about responsiveness. I don't want to
Mm,
send something in and then have to wait a week to get a
yeah.
response. Like if you can respond within minutes or days, or I mean, sorry, hours, that's way better than having to wait days or weeks. Uh,
Well, yeah, I
and
mean, this is the whole thing. And I did a study actually last year on meeting schedulers. Actually, when we didn't have a meeting scheduler for Blend, and when we did have a
yeah,
meeting scheduler for Blend after form submission. And I'll have to go back and get the stats, and we can put them in the podcast notes. But the improvement on actual connected rate with those prospects was it was like 50% higher. It was seriously significant, and that was the process that we were optimizing for the end buyer. I suppose the question here is like, how do you create the same optimizations but for procurement?
yeah. So there, I think we have to think about what are the things that procurement's going to need to be able to do their job, to be able to confidently put us in the three or four. Procurement will rarely make the decision, but they will frame the evaluation based on their specific way of creating, of buying,
Yeah.
basically, whether it's a scorecard or whether it's anyway, lots of different models. But if um, if we are thinking in advance about procurement and what they care about, and we're messaging, and we think that like we see some intent that uh, this company may be evaluating something that has anything to do with us, we should
Mm,
absolutely, before it becomes a procurement event, be messaging
yeah.
procurement entire everybody we can find in the procurement organization, because we don't know who it's going to get assigned to, just starting to influence that group of people and helping them better understand, you know, give them resources, familiarize them with our brand, and then offer them resources so that when it does become an initiative and somebody gets assigned, they're like, oh, somebody just offered me an RFP for that. Let me go look at that first. I'd much rather us be the ones writing the RFP than having AI write it, right? Um, but we can do all those kinds of things to think, and all the things we've already talked about. I won't bother going back through them, but creating real tools, real access to information that is the information procurement will need instead of the information that the economic buyer will need. We want that too, but we have to make procurement's life better if we expect them to support our candidacy. And then obviously the finding just finding us in general is going to be really, really important
Yeah.
if we're in a space where we're competing against really, really large uh, platform players, which a lot of our customers are.
All right. I think that is probably enough for this episode. Loads of like good insight there. I mean, for me, just thinking about the framing of how we actually make it easier for two distinctive buyer cohorts is really interesting. Like, hopefully, other industries can take parallels to this as well, where it is maybe procurement plus another like function within the business that have to get involved in the buyer process. Is not just procurement to think about here. It's all of the functions that do need to be involved that we
That's right.
can relate this
Yeah, the
to.
same is
So
true for IT and for other organizations you're going to need support from. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully you found this episode as interesting and fun as I did, and I think Josh did. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the episode today. Before you head off, if AEO has been on your mind and you're not sure where to start, here's something worth doing right now. We're offering a full AI visibility analysis completely free. We'll look at how your brand is showing up across the major AI engines, what's influencing those results, how competitors compare, and what you should do about it. Then we'll walk you through all the findings on a call. Actual findings too, specific to your business with real next steps. Not a template, not a PDF, a proper analysis. You can request yours by clicking the link in the description below.